How are your business ideas getting on? I hope you've thought of those problems and maybe some solutions for them. But today we're going to be doing all about marketing, how you then get those ideas to your customers. And we have another amazing treat in store for you today because I get to interview Chris, who actually works in marketing and does that for companies, again, all over the world.
Think about yourself. What would make you buy what you're selling?
Let's see what insightful information we can get from Chris today. Right, we're very excited. We've got Chris here with us to help us with our marketing strategy as part of Lizards Lair. So you've got to think about how you're going to market your products. And Chris, actually, if you want to explain to everyone what you do for a business and how that involves marketing.
Absolutely. So I run a creative agency, and what that is it's a company that can help other companies communicate a message, solve a problem, or advance their business towards their goal. So if you want to sell 100 glasses of lemonade, or if you have a competitor who is more popular than you, stuff like that, you might come to a business like mine and say, hey, how can you help?
So not only do you know how to market, you actually help other businesses market, which is why you're such a helpful person to speak to. And what actually is marketing then, Chris? Like, what does it mean?
Absolutely. So marketing is essentially how you tell people about what it is that you want them to buy or to do. So most businesses fall into sort of one of two categories. Either they sell goods or they provide services. And so selling goods would be McDonald's or B&M, or any place you go to where you walk away with something physically in your hands. And any service-based company is if you have to hire an electrician to come out to fix your electrics, or if you have someone come to clean your house, or anything like that. Okay. So what marketing is then is, like I said, is how those businesses sort of tell people about that stuff. So they say, if I have things that I want to sell, obviously I have to convince people to buy them. So marketing would be how we tell people about the items, how we tell people about how the items will make their lives better or easier, or more interesting or more exciting, anything like that. It's storytelling with an end in mind.
Oh, that's fantastic. So in my mind, originally marketing, you're literally stood at a market stall selling your wares, and that's kind of, I suppose, the marketing aspect is telling people about it, like in a very simple way. However, nowadays marketing branches out to so many different areas. Can you give us some examples of how you market then? Because where do you market?
Absolutely. So it's usually broken down into sort of two categories: print and digital. And print is what it sounds like: posters, billboards, newspapers, magazines, anything that's physically printed onto something else would be sort of print advertising. And digital advertising is the same sort of thing, but anywhere you'll find it in a digital environment. So at a lot of bus stops, you'll see big posters printed out. But nowadays, a lot of those print posters are being turned into digital displays. And one of the advantages of digital over print is digital can be very fast. You don't have to wait for it to be printed, to make sure that it looks right when it's printed, to be shipped to you, then to be put up somewhere. It's just fast. You can just click a couple of buttons, it'll go into that digital display, it'll go onto a website. It can be a podcast, it can be an ad on Spotify, anything like that.
Wow. And how do you choose then which one of those to go for? How do you choose where to market your products?
Absolutely. So the two main things you're going to look at anytime you're trying to figure out where you want to market yourself is, one, you want to figure out who are you trying to sell to, because everyone thinks, oh, well, if I'm selling lemonade, I want everyone to buy my lemonade. But in casting such a broad vision, in sort of trying to get absolutely everyone, very often you'll get no one. So what you need to do is work out, okay, well, who am I best suited to sell lemonade to? Well, if I am, I don't know, if I'm a fan of football and I want to sell lemonade, well, I should play to my strengths, and maybe I'll try to sell my lemonade to other football fans. Maybe it's on the way to the match, maybe it's on the way after the match, maybe it's, you know, somewhere else where people might hang out and be thirsty when they're watching the football. So there's that side of things, looking at who you want to sell to. And the other thing is, how much resource do you have to put into it? Because different types of marketing cost different amounts of money and will take different amounts of time, different skills, all sorts of different things. So you want to look at what you have and you want to look at who you're trying to win.
Oh, that's really fascinating. So it's actually about really understanding your customer and kind of where they are, so where they're going to see it and how you're going to communicate with them. So in terms of social media, like how do you pick which platforms? Is that just more about understanding your customer and finding out which platforms they use?
Absolutely. So every social media platform that is sort of has widespread people using it will have different demographics that are more or less likely to use it. So for instance, a lot of people wouldn't think this, but Twitter has a really high proportion of older users who have joined in the last 5 years. In terms of who is most likely to go on Twitter as a new user now, it's overwhelmingly going to be older folks. And similar to, for instance, Snapchat and TikTok, those tend to have much younger audiences. And so again, if you're looking to, I don't know, if you have something that is specific to older people or specific to younger people, you'd go, okay, well, it's probably going to be best to pitch it through this platform.
Oh, wow. That's very fascinating. And then, so you've decided where you're going to pitch it. So you're going to put some marketing out on Facebook or Twitter. Are there any kind of guidelines you go for with putting the marketing out there? Like what?
Yeah, so that's where there's a little bit of differing opinion. So there have been thousands of books written on marketing and what works and what doesn't work. And you have some people who are very old-fashioned and they have, you know, methods they came up with 50 years ago and they say these will never go out of style. And then you have on the complete opposite end people who totally sort of bypass what I would call like the human component, like thinking about people as like humans with wants and needs and compassion and like personalities, and they're just looking at data and they're like, well, we see that 2.5% of people are more likely to do this if we make it red at this stage. So we're going to do that. And personally, I like to sort of take a little bit of both of those worlds and sort of bring them together. So I think you have to be very focused on whether or not something is working. One of the issues in marketing is you can never really prove whether or not what you're proposing is going to work. You can just say, I think it's going to work based off of this. And at that point, you move forward, you spend the money, you do the work, and afterwards, you sort of see whether or not you were right or how right you were. And that's where the data comes in really handy. But there are a lot of campaigns or marketing moves that are sort of data led. So people will look at the information they have and go, ooh, well, it looks like there's a little gap here. So let's try to fill that gap. But sometimes those sorts of campaigns miss out the fact that you know, people are people and we have feelings about things that don't necessarily, you know, act logically.
To data, yeah. So are there some good examples you could give of like, oh, well, this is some really good marketing where it works well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me think for a moment. So one example of a really clever move that has definitely paid off that many people, especially younger people, might be familiar with is there's a show called The Mandalorian, which is a Star Wars show. And there's a character on that show called Baby Yoda. And when Baby Yoda first appeared on this show, like it went everywhere. Like everyone on the internet was talking about it. It immediately, they could put Baby Yoda on anything and sell it. And it was this crazy marketing move. And a lot of people just thought, oh, wow, well, I guess, you know, that's the way it was always going to be, is they weren't going to tell anyone about Baby Yoda until Baby Yoda popped up. But it actually came out about 9 months after that show first aired that it was on the recommendation of actually just a famous musician who was friends with one of the guys creating the show. And he said, no, like don't use Baby Yoda in the marketing beforehand because it's going to build the hype up too much. People are going to get too excited and you won't be able to live up to it. But if you keep that a secret and then you launch the show with that, it's going to surprise people so much. You're just going to have everyone, falling over trying to get Baby Yoda stuff. And that is what happens.
That's really fascinating. So the marketing was actually thinking about how people are going to react to things, and actually we don't want to, we kind of, when they release stuff as well, so like when you put your message across. And do you have any top tips for budding entrepreneurs as they're like thinking about marketing and spent all this time designing their product and testing it out? Actually, marketing companies can spend equally as much on their marketing campaign. So what kind of tips can you give them with their marketing?
Absolutely. I think the number one tip I would give anyone, especially if you don't have a lot of money to spend, is think about yourself. What would make you buy what you're selling? Because the thing is, there are so many things that we're not experts in. And oftentimes we sort of, it feels like the world tells us, hey, you have to be an expert in this. So you should pretend to be an expert or act like you're an expert. And in doing so, then people will like what you're doing. Whereas marketing nowadays is really the opposite for small businesses or for individuals. Really, you should say, well, I'm an expert in what I like. So let me use that as my marketing. Let me use that as my sales tactics. So speaking to people the way you would want to be spoken to, which is really simple stuff. We're told, as children, treat people the way you want to be treated, speak to people the way you want to be spoken to. Well, honestly, if you have something that you're wanting to sell that is good, that you genuinely believe in and you want to buy, that really rings true. Speak to people the way you would want to be spoken to. Don't feel like you have to sound very professional and stiff and boring. If you're a funny person, then be funny, make jokes, do silly stuff. If you're a more serious person, then that's fine too. Like, be more serious, but just make sure that people know this is who you are, and the thing you're building is an extension of who you are, and that's why you've done this.
That's really nice. So it's about kind of getting your personality out as part of the business and part of the product and things like that. So that's really fascinating, and building that brand persona, I suppose, around you, if that is your business. Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely fascinating, and so many different things to think about for building up your marketing. So thank you so much for your time, Chris. That's been amazing and so helpful. I'm looking forward to seeing how everyone takes that forward in their Lizard Lair pitches with their marketing strategies, with some kind of marketing materials they might come up with. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Chris was so knowledgeable about different types of marketing and the way companies market. How do you think you might market your ideas to your customers? How do you think you're going to get your ideas across them?